my interview with Dr. Andrew Whitman, founder of the Mental Toughness Training Center, a leadership consultancy specializing in peak performance, team dynamics, and resolving conflict in the workplace. Andrew is also a former Marine, a former police officer and federal agent, and author of Ground Zero Leadership, CEO of You, and the 7 Secrets of Resilience for Parents, Navigating the Stress of Parenthood. Andrew, considering your schedule and everything that you do, including your Get Warrior Tough radio show, I can't tell you how delighted I am that you're able to find some time to even join us today. So thank you.
Oh, no, thanks for having me, Kath. You know you're one of my favorite people on the whole planet. I already tell you that all the time, but I'm serious about that. Like, I really mean that. I'll do anything that you ever ask of me to do because I'm a huge fan of Kathy Hammond.
Well, I might remember that for a favor. So
no problem.
Thanks so much. But, today we're going to talk about how becoming resilient can dramatically increase your organization's sales. But before we do, just a couple of housekeeping notes. You're all muted. I know, tough for salespeople. And at the end, if you have any questions, Andrew, more than happy to take those questions. You can either, type it in the little chat box, or you can raise your hand electronically, and I'll unmute you so you can speak to Andrew directly. So let's get started. We're talking about resilience. And and I like to think I know the definition of resilience. I think of resilience as bouncing back and being flexible. But I think you ascribe a deeper meaning to the word. So how do you define resilience?
Yeah, and that's a correct definition. Like, that's the dictionary definition, right? Bouncing back. But it's so reactive, Kathy. I like to be proactive. I don't want to wait till something bad happens to me before I, bounce back or show my strength. So I want to proactively, for me, it's a proactive skill of taking control of my thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and actions before pressure happens. And that way, when pressure happens, then I can smoothly sail through it. So it's resilience for me is the constant practice of taking control of my thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and actions, right? So I equate it to mental toughness, right? But it goes even kind of deeper than just, mental toughness, just gutting out, doing one more rep. And it's controlling your emotions too. And that's way harder than most people think. It's easier said than done. I'll say it that way. So I want to control all of that, my thoughts, feelings, and my attitudes.
Wow. Well, so, and since we're talking sales today, how does increasing sales, resilience in a sales force actually drive more revenue for a company?
Well, this is huge. So like a lot of all my clients, I'll say this, are all performers. Like, so they're athletes, they're professional athletes. I coach coaches of, high performance athletic teams. I coach CEOs. We coach salespeople. So salespeople are the athletes of the business world, right? So anybody that has a performance, element to what they do day in and day out, this is going to increase your, whatever, I'll say it this way, whatever your, however your metrics are, if it is revenue or if it's profit, or if, yours is just, getting through your, how many calls did I do today, whichever metric you want to use. The resilience and mental toughness will get you through doing the grind, right, until you're successful. I just heard a guy say that, before you're successful, people are very critical of you. And then after you're successful, there's nothing that you could do wrong. Everything you do is fantastic because you're successful when operate, right? But no one started that way, right? So think of and I said this to you yesterday when we were talking, that Elton John, think when Elton John was first practicing the piano, if he just just practiced it when he felt like it and, just on occasion, he would never be Elton John, right? So this is the same thing with sales. You got to do the stuff that you don't necessarily like doing. When I was the fat kid in high school. And I was 50 pounds overweight when I enlisted in the Marine Corps. And the thing that I hated more on planet Earth than anything was running. I mean, I hated running. The only thing more hateful than running was more running. And that's what you do at boot camp is lots and lots of running, right? So I decided I have to make running my friend if I'm going to be a Marine. So I changed how I thought about running. I changed how I felt about running. I changed my attitude towards running. And I made it my friend. As soon as that happened, I became very, very good at running. And then soon I loved running. And then running became almost like a spiritual experience for me. Like I could not go a day without. I became addicted to it. And this is the process that for every skill that you want to have success at. If you want to drive your revenue, find out what are those things you have to do. Do your prospecting, do your lead qualification, then make your calls, go through your sales script, and then go through the closing. That's the process. That's the only thing you can control, and that's what resilience is. I control everything that I can control and don't worry about what the result is.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And that is one thing, of course, when we have to go out and find our prospects and, we dread, having to pick up the phone all the time and because we know what's going to happen on the other end. And, but you're right. You embrace it. Absolutely. I suspect there are, like varying degrees of resilience as there are varying degrees of happiness. So first of all, how important is it for someone to assess where they are on the resilience scale, and what impact can they, can it have if they know, like, how to be able to increase it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I look at it as, I don't like scale resilience, but this is how I locate my own mental toughness, my own resilience. Is I base it on, I have 5 mindsets that I kind of categorize my thinking and my attitude in, right? So the lowest mindset is what I call the defeated, right? The defeated mindset, if I have a defeated mindset, it says that I've lost before I've even started. Like, there's no sense of me picking up this phone because they're just going to say no. Like, if that's your mindset, like you're like the Cleveland Browns, of course you're going to lose before you even go on the field. Like, enough already, right? So if that's your mindset, then understand that you are not being resilient right now. The next level up is the survival mode, right? I'm just going to do just enough to not get fired. Like, so, and this is what the survival person does. They'll make a call, they'll do a sale, and then they're taking the rest of the day off because, like, I did one sale, so I'm good for, like, probably the next week. Because, look, I got one, right? So, and that's a bad mindset to be in, too. That's not resilient. And I go with the average-minded. The average-minded is, like, 75% of us, where we want to be comfortable. We don't really want to be rich or super successful because, that would be kind of like greedy or something. We just want to be, comfortable and have job security. And if I hit enough numbers that I'm secure, I'm okay. I'm not at the top of the pack. I'm not at the bottom. I'm somewhere in the middle, but I'm good. And that's 75% of most sales reps that I come across. And there's the tyrants, right? And we don't want to be a tyrant, but a tyrant is, I'm looking out for number one. I'll mow you down. I'll run you over, and I'm going to get mine. Like, and there are some bullies out there that they close sales just because they're like that. All right. So there's a level of success to that, but I don't want to be that because the relationship is burnt before you really even get it started. And then the final, I call it the elite warrior mindset. This is where resilience lives. The elite warrior says that I'm the problem and I'm the solution, and I'm playing to win. Okay. And I like to use a lot of sports analogies because, like, and I said, sales reps are athletes. If you guys remember, there was a Super Bowl a couple years ago that was the Atlanta Falcons against the New England Patriots, and the Falcons were killing them. Like, it was the biggest blowout ever. And then in the second half, the Patriots came back, and they just did one play after another play. They didn't care about the score. They just cared about executing each play. And what happened was the Patriots won. They had the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history, and now they're the champions. Right there, this is what an elite warrior does. Elite warrior says, I'm the problem and I'm the solution. It's not, I don't care what the numbers are, what is stacked against me. Think of it like this. D-Day is coming up, right? 6/6, 1944. I always remember that day because those World War II veterans were told to go take Normandy Beach. Did they say, hey, there's barbed wire over there? Hey, there's bad guys shooting at us. The weather's bad. They're saying I could drown when I go. They're not saying any of those things. They're fixing every problem that comes up, and then they take the hill, they take the beach, and that's the elite warrior mindset. If you have that mindset going into every call, you're not thinking of all the things that could go wrong. You're thinking about objectives, finishing what I started, right? And that's really how you can measure where you're at based on what your attitude and your feeling and your thought is when you're picking up the phone.
Yeah, and that is so true. Yes, and which leads me to, in your best-selling book, The Ground Zero Leadership, CEO of You, it says the individual is the CEO of themselves, and that they are to get their board of directors to work together to accomplish goals. So, what do you mean by board of directors?
Yeah, and everybody has a board of directors, and we all know them as our body, our mind, and our emotions. And I always ask this question every time I'm in corporate, any audience. When you have a boardroom meeting with yourself, who usually wins the vote, body, mind, or emotions? Right. And people are like, oh, I'm like, have you ever made an emotional decision? How'd that work out? And be like, not too good. Right. So who should be running the boardroom is the mind. Okay. So in the boardroom, there's 3 votes: body, mind, and emotions. And here's the trick, is that the mind and the emotions will never vote together, right? They're diametrically opposed. I always say they're like the State Department and the Department of Defense, right? One has a diplomatic mission, the other one a military mission. They never agree on anything. Okay. So your body is the swing vote. So in order to get your mind to run the boardroom, you have to begin to dominate your body. And that's why when we talk about mental toughness, everyone thinks about athletes and, spec ops soldiers or law enforcement, because there's a physical fitness element to those positions. That's really the first level of getting control of your boardroom, is dominating your body. And what I found in our in-house research is that most adults stopped training their body and dominating their body after they got out of diapers. Because that's the point of being an adult. I can eat my dessert first. I can sleep in. I can do whatever I feel like doing. But if you do what you feel like doing, the emotions quickly take over the boardroom. So in order to be CEO of you, what we're looking for is to get your body to line up with your mind, to agree with your mind. And then you can override your emotions when you need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because sales is fluid and it's certainly unpredictable, and we'll work like crazy to make a sale. And even when we think we have the contract in the bag, sometimes doesn't come to fruition.
Right.
In those instances, it's easy for our emotions to win over and for us to feel defeated. So what are some of the steps that we can take, or something we can keep in mind, and or the logic, how to engage our logic to take charge during stressful situations, such as when the board of directors, exerts pressure. The real board of directors to exert pressure to generate more revenue. So what are some steps that we can take?
All right, so here's the number one rule of being CEO of you, is to separate logic from emotion. Now, emotions are very important, but they have their place. Emotion is our driver. It's our engine. Right? It should be the reason we do the hard thing. Okay. And we should steer with logic. So make our decisions based on logic, right? When we're steering, it's logic. So think of it like this, is like, if you came home, and this is the short version, right? But if you came home from work one day and you saw that your house was in fire and engulfed in flames and the neighbors are out, and you realize your 2 kids, 8 and 10, are home in the house, right? And you're like, have you seen my kids? Have no one seen my kids? You go, we got to save the babies. And you go running in, and the fire chief says, look, it's nearly impossible for you to go and say it's a 1 in a million shot. This is a recovery operation. I'm not even sending my people in there. You need to go sit on the curb, and we'll recover what's left of your baby's bodies when the fire burns out. And I always ask this, are you taking the 1 in a million shot, or are you going to sit on the curb? You're going to take the 1 in a million shot. If you have kids, I found a guy in New Jersey once that said he wasn't going in. He goes, I don't have kids. I'm not going in. I said, what if it was your mom? He's like, I'm going in. I'm like, you're lucky, because I was going to talk bad about New Jersey. But so we're all going in. Okay. So that's the emotion, our driver. It overcomes fear. It overcomes, pain. It overcomes everything, because we love our kids so much. We're going to go. That's the emotional driver. Now, here's where the logic comes in. What's the plan?
Okay.
Save the babies. No, that's the target. Save the babies. That's not the plan. We have to come up with a plan, and this is where logic comes into play, right? So now I need to begin to gather facts and come up with a plan, right, that go in and save my kids. And this is the same in sales. That's why we have scripts. A lot of people are like, this cracks me up. Kathy, I got to just say this. The sales reps, especially like ones that are not producing, they're not hitting their numbers. They'll tell you that, the script is bad, or they don't, but they're not following the script, because, it seems like I'm inauthentic if I follow the script. So I asked him, man, did you ever get married? Have you ever been to a wedding? Yeah. Did they say their vows? Yeah. Do you know those things were scripted? They're not just making them up. Was that make them inauthentic? Well, no, of course not. Stick to the script. That's why we have the minister read the vows and we repeat after them, so we don't mess them up. Right. So stick to the process. This is where logic. I'm just going to stick to the process no matter how I feel about it. Right. So, and that's how we separate logic from emotion. I get off this emotional roller coaster of I feel good if I do good, I feel bad if I do bad. Let's smooth that out and just focus on the process of how to make the sale.
Yeah, and I liken this to like airline pilots with their checklist. They go through it before every single flight.
Yes.
So, and they're following a script. and it gets them from point A to point B. So yeah, so there's
and I don't want them to like cut corners on that either. Do you?
No,
no,
no, of course not.
I want to plane. I want to know that guy's doing the process. You know what I mean? I want the maintenance guys doing their process. I want everybody to do their process, right, and stick to it, no matter how you feel. And that's a great the airline pilot or the fighter pilot. That's a great example. These guys are super mentally tough because they have to do the process no matter what is going on around them. No externals get them off from doing their process and getting the plane from point A to point B safely. And it's the same mindset.
Yes, yeah, exactly. We tend to forget that. I think, too, because in a lot of instances, people don't look at as sales as a profession like they would, a firefighter or a police officer or,
lawyer, doctor, dentist. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
that's a shame, man.
That's
a shame because a professional salesperson like that. I run into this all the time because I do a lot of speaking. People are like, "Oh, you're a public speaker." I said, "No, I'm a professional speaker." There's a huge difference. Yeah. I always hit my time marks. I don't say off the cuff stuff that would get me into HR. Right there because I'm a professional. I'm not just out public speaking. I'm not right. Everything that I say is scripted. Everything that I'm telling you today, I've said before. Probably 100 different times in different settings. And what I do is I just piece those scripts, the talking points together. And this is all sales is. It's just like we do in life. Think about this, even when complaining. I watched this the other day, right? That a sideline parent at a high school sporting event complained about the ref to somebody. And they were like, oh, yeah, it's awful. So because they got validation from that complaint, they went and told somebody else the same talking points. And then they got validation. And then they went and told those same talking points a third time and a fourth time. And I was like, yeah, this is the same thing that we do in sales, though, right? We say the line, and this is so smart. If you say the script and you get validation from it, then use that language in your scripting pattern. If you're not, and when people are shutting down, then you need to change, what you're saying and how you're saying it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You also wrote in your book about being a first responder. What do you mean by that?
All right, so most of us live our lives as emotional reactors. Whenever we hear anything, we react emotionally, right? But a first responder, and this is out of my law enforcement days, right? First responder comes up with a response before they take action. They have a planned response, a considered response. So imagine the 911 operator, right? Have you ever made a 911 call or seen one on TV, Kathy?
Yes.
Do the 911 operators, though, they answer the call, they're like, oh my gosh, the house is on fire. Is that how they answer? No, they say 911. What's your emergency? Mm-hmm. And there's the first question that every one of us should be asking if we want to become a first responder. Instead of emotionally reacting to any news, what's the emergency? 99% of the time, there's no emergency. Even when the actual board of directors is screaming for new revenue, it's probably not an emergency. So I'm not going to get all spun up just because the board is all spun up, just because the CEO is spun up emotionally, because what happens is, that's a quick downhill trot to bad performance. If you've ever seen this in a sporting event, like especially at high school or college, where the coach starts screaming at the refs and loses his mind.
Yes.
The entire emotion of that, it goes through the entire team and they just do a nosedive. Like that's never good for because it runs through, it's wildfire, right? That kind of emotion. It's going to stop with me. As a first responder, I don't care how emotional you are. I'm going to channel the 911 operator. What's the emergency? And then even if it is an emergency, I'm going to ask questions and gather information so I can come up with a plan of response to get the kids out of the house, not just freak out.
Yeah, and that is so applicable in the sales environment, as you were saying. And so what can a sales manager look for in a prospective or their current sales staff to see if they're able to maintain their composure in stressful situations? Because externally, it may look like they've got it together. Right. But internally, could be a completely different story. So how can a sales manager, what can they look for? This is a trained skill.
That's almost what you're asking me is like, how can I tell if someone can drive a car or not?
Yeah,
right? It's a skill. Driving the car is a skill. And the first time they get behind the wheel, how good are they? They're awful. And then everything's herky-jerky, right? You have to practice this being a first responder, mental toughness, And resilience, I teach it as a physical skill. It's this, if you look at it as a physical skill, thinking as a physical skill, how my board of directors interacts as a physical skill, then I can train this and I get better. And listen, there's science behind this. We know that willpower, it acts just like muscles in a gym. The more you exercise self-control, because that's all being a first responder is I'm going to control my reaction. The more you exercise self-control, the stronger you're going to get and better you're going to get at it. And the longer you can exert self-control and the more often you can exert self-control, right? So if you don't practice this will go away just like someone who does, like if you did push-ups in the gym and then you just stopped going to the gym for 3 weeks, what happens is you lose all that strength. And now you have to start back over from zero. This is the exact same thing. So you have to stay on this every day. This work, this mental and emotional work, I liken it to being, it's a physical workout. You don't have to do an hour of this a day, but if you work on these skills 5-10 minutes a day, every day consistently, you'll be more apt to be a first responder than if you just try it once in a while. Look, I got 3 teenagers, right? So, well, 2 of them are in college now, but the third one, she just got her learner's permit, and it's the same thing that we did with the other 2, right? Everything's herky jerky. My eyes are up, looking down the road. And then 2 weeks later, they're playing with the radio and kicking back. Right, and then this is the same way we build this skill of resilience. So there's no real external way to tell, and then you could lose it. You could lose it if you just don't practice these things anymore. It could go away just like that.
Yes, that. So really, in effect, for sales management to be able to coach on it, to help develop that skill with their sales force. I think it's one of the competencies that is completely overlooked in so many instances. Just 100%. Because the external may not match what's going on internally with that salesperson. That's a really good point. One thing that you've written about and that you've talked about that I have pinned to my monitor ever since I heard this is the 2-minute rule. And, this is whenever I'm stretching beyond the status quo, or if there's something that comes up that it's really challenging for me, that's what I go to. I go to Andrew Whitman's 2-minute rule. So would you share with all of us your rule and the impact that this can have on a sales professional's ability to generate more sales?
Absolutely. So the 2-minute rule, and I ask this question, can you suspend your disbelief? And people ask me, what? I'm like, well, let me ask it another way. Have you ever watched a movie that you liked? And everybody's like, oh, yeah. I said, well, congratulations. You suspended your disbelief for at least an hour and a half because, those aren't real. They're Hollywooded up, even the ones based on a true story. And, right. So we all know that. So you can do it. Every human, if you've ever watched a movie and you liked it, you have the ability to suspend your disbelief. And here's what that looks like. When you hear the voice of resistance on the inside that says, that's impossible, that won't work, or you even hear an outside voice like the fire chief telling you that it's a 1 in a million shot to get your kids out. This is the perfect time to act, because the brain is the original human search engine. It's the original search engine, the human brain. Original search engine, it has to answer a question. It's going to search for an answer. So the best question that we could give it is, and this is the 2-minute rule, how would I do it? If I ask myself, how would I do it when I'm faced with, oh, that's impossible, that can't work, that won't work, that's crazy talk, we can't do it. I'm like, oh, I'm not arguing that. We can't. I totally get that it's impossible. But if it were possible, just playing along for fantasy, if it were possible, how do you think we would do it? And I'll tell you, you ask that question and then lay it on the table, pretty soon you're going to get, within 30 seconds, you'll have 5 options that you thought you had none just literally 30 seconds ago. Right? So you ask, well, how can I close this sale? Okay, well, we can't close that guy. He's impossible. That's an impossible customer. Okay, no, I get it. He is. But if he wasn't, how would we do it? How would we close him? Right? And then your brain will start searching all the information of, how do we solve that problem? Right? And how do we get around that? And how do we bring them to the table? So when you turn that brain on, this is how you go from logic or from emotion to logic. This is how you go from first emotional reactor to first responder. This is how we go to steering with logic and making our mind run the boardroom, is ask this question, how would I do it? It gives ourselves 2 minutes of cognitive space to channel that 911 operator. Instead of saying we can't do it, just say, all right, when you hear that on the inside, you'd be like, all right, well, if we could, how would we? and then begin to think on that along those lines, and everything changes.
Yes, I think that could also be, applicable with for the sales manager who has some poorer performing sales people. That they'll always say, you've got the bottom 20%, the middle, and then the top 20%. But if it were possible to get your bottom 20% performing even to the next level, how would you do it? Just suspend the disbelief instead of the bias.
That's a great question. And here's the answer to that. Every day, spend 5 to 10 minutes getting their mindsets right before they even pick up the phone. Like if I'm the sales manager and I'm going to write the job of the sales manager is to get his team to perform their best, right? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Right. So what I'm going to do is every morning, and this is just like a Bill Belichick or Nick Saban or Dabo Sweeney, any of those guys that have championship teams, they talk to the team before they go to work every day, before they take the field, and then at halftime, they have another chat, right? So that's twice a day. You should, as a salesman, if you want to get your performers getting the best out of them, if you want to make your better guys even better and your worst ones to better, and you're moving the 2 to the 3 and the 3 to the 5, every day I'm going to get in there and I'm going to give them, these tools to use so that the rejection and the emotion of the rejection or the emotion, it's a grind and all that stuff, that it doesn't wear them down. And I'll tell you, if you've ever seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street, right? I know that's a crazy movie, but Jordan Belfort, and I know Jordan, he every day, that's what he did. Every day he's doing the motivational and the skills and motivation training. Every day he's on and twice a day he's up there. He's coaching them. That's all he's doing. And it was successful. And I know that there was a lot of, stuff that went south on him, but that piece was very successful. And coaches, successful coaches, do that all across the planet, whether it's soccer or baseball, even tennis coaches. I mean, Tiger Woods has a caddy that's a sports psychologist that coaches him the whole time, all this kind of stuff, right? So I want to constantly be coaching my performers.
Well, and, therein lies the difference between just, being a sales manager and being a coach. And there's a world of difference, and it will also make a world of difference in an organization. And so finally, in your book, you wrote, I love this when I first read this, don't waste a good strikeout. In the sales arena, this is a great analogy as, sales professionals are at bat a lot of the times, and most of what they're doing is a swing and a miss. So, it's tough to keep going back to the plate every day, never knowing if you're ever going to hit another home run. How should sales leaders and individual contributors, the sales professionals, treat their strikeouts?
As gold. I mean, I'll tell you this. This is and I got that from Babe Ruth, right? Because Babe Ruth, he struck out twice as many times as he hit home runs. And he's like, and 100 years later, we're still talking about this guy. The press would get on him. You struck out twice as many times. And he's like, listen, I never waste a good strikeout. Every strike, not even a strike, but every strike brings me closer to my next home run, because he's learning the pitcher, he's learning the pitches, he's learning the timing. And so this is what I see. The human machine rarely learns when we're from a success, because we did good. So we never take the time to see what we did right or wrong. We're like, that was awesome. But when we lose, if you don't waste that, you can learn what can I do different, right? What can I change in my process that gets me closer to my next home run? And listen, with Babe Ruth, I love this because he faced a lot of different pitchers. In sales, we face a lot of different, leads and customers, right? So everyone once I get used to, how they're pitching, then I can change, my hitting style so that that strikeout today, the next time I cue it up and come back around, I'm closer to hitting a home run if I learned my lessons. And that's what people, they like, oh, it was such a failure. But listen, man, I can't wait to hear the failures, because that's how I make my biggest growth. That's when I do my best work, is when I look back after action report of where it went wrong, and then I make my course corrections and then begin to get it right.
Words to live by for all sales people, all sales professionals. We're at the end here of, like our discussion. And if anyone has any questions, if you want to raise your hand, I can unmute you and you can ask Andrew directly. And I'll also see what we have in for the questions coming in. I'll give everybody a moment here to ask a question. But in the meantime, here's one. Of all the competencies a sales professional must possess to be successful, how much would you say resilience contributes to their success?
Well, and of course I'm biased on this, but I'm going to tell you it's the silver bullet, right? Resilience, mental toughness, learning how to control your thoughts, feelings, and attitudes and actions, especially under pressure. That's the key to everything. And listen, everything that I teach is it's not only based in neuroscience and biopsychology, performance science, but I've battle tested it for 30 years on the battlefield, right? I've been in the highest pressure that you could be. And listen, I'll tell you this, Kathy. Well, I used to make my living with a gun for like 30 years in various, different, roles with the government. I would be scared to make a sales call. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm never afraid to get shot at. Like, I'd rather get shot at than make a sales call. This is so stupid, right? So I had just applied these mental toughness rules that I used in combat and applied it to making my sales calls. And I'm telling you, within a week, if you just do what you got, it'll go away. You'll desensitize yourself to it. But if you're always like, because I'll say this, the fear of the fight is always worse than the fight. And the fear of the phone call is always worse than the phone call. Just dial the phone, man. That call is not going to be the end. I mean, it's not that bad. I promise you. Even if they cuss, swear, be like, man, bless their heart. They needed to hear from me today. I'm glad I could interrupt them. They're having a bad day. At least they got 30 seconds of respite, when they talk to me. So I'm going to tell you, resilience is, for me, it's the key to everything. It's a game changer. It's a life changer. And I've been obsessed with it since I was a kid, man.
Yeah, and it reminds me, I'll say this very quickly, of a former client who she had escaped from Iran through the desert into Turkey, had to pay people, do all this stuff. But when I met her, she was buying some stuff from me for her new business. And she said she was terrified to make cold calls.
Right.
I said, you crossed the desert in the middle of the night to get your freedom into Turkey. Calling these people is nothing. So,
right.
Really? See, it is interesting. Yeah, just the perception.
I had that same mindset, man. I'm like, what's going to happen? They're not shooting at me here. I'm not going to die. I mean, it's like.
Exactly. So Andrew, for those of us out there wanting to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and the website is getwarriortough.com. You can call the office at 864-977-1443. There's no fence around me, I like to say. You can just Google Andrew Whitman or Mental Toughness Marine. All my stuff will pop up. There's a way to get to me. I promise you that.
And when is your Get Warrior Tough radio show? What days is that on?
Well, it's online now, and you could go to our website and click under radio, and then we put it up in after the fact because it's a local show. After the fact, you can see the segments are in 12-minute YouTube videos, and there's just there's over 400 of those videos up there, and we just keep adding to them. So you could go and just click on the radio under Get Warrior Tough, and then that's why you would connect with the show anywhere on the planet.
Great. Well, if no other questions, thank you so much, Andrew, for spending your time with us today. I mean, I know your schedule
Thanks for having me. So good. Thanks for having me, Kathy. That's awesome.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. And I'll also have a recording of this live interview with Dr. Andrew Whitman. So I'm happy to share that with everyone, and everyone have a great day. Thanks so much.